Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube. I'm really glad that you're here. We're here to celebrate the seniors of the Drexel Animation and Visual Effects major this year. We wish you could have been all together in person, but we're doing the best we can with YouTube today. I just wanted to share that we will be watching the YouTube chat for any questions you might have. Our format today will be something of a film festival. We'll play each film, and after the film, we'll bring up all of the creators on stage on this big screen over here by me. And Milady Bridges will be here to interview them, but Dave Moriello and I will also be watching the YouTube chat. So please be active in the YouTube chat, cheer on your favorite students. Well, students isn't the right word anymore. All of these amazing creatives have graduated from Drexel University. They are now alumni. And so with that, I just want to again thank you for being here and hand over the show to Milady Bridges, who will be hosting our events today. Over to you, Milady.
Thank you, Nick. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Nick said, we are here to celebrate our graduated seniors and all of the hard work that they've put into these projects. But not only all the hard work they've spent this past year, but the past 4 years, because this is a very challenging program. And not only have these students succeeded, but they've excelled. I am extremely proud of their work. I'm proud of them, and they should be proud also. So let's get started, because you're not here to see me, you are here to see them. Our first animated short is brought to you by Dog in a Jacket Productions. This is a love story unlike any you've seen before. I present to you Sign Language. Hey, hello, team. Welcome to our stage. So that was fantastic. How are you guys feeling? Are you happy? Are you proud?
Yeah, I'm happy and proud. Thank
Definitely.
you
Yeah.
to anyone who watched.
Yeah, you
It's
guys
been a
should
long
be.
time.
What was that?
It's just been a long time coming. A lot of work for a while. So it's glad to see it finally up and for everyone to see.
Well, you guys should definitely be proud. You did a fabulous job. There's a few moments that I just absolutely love in this short. And I did notice that superhero landing. I don't know if that was intended, but the superhero landing out of the grocery bag.
Yeah.
So, some questions for you guys. And again, audience, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat feed. We do have Nick and Dave monitoring that, and they will ask your questions to the team. So my first question for you all is, why did your team choose to do a live action production and integrate CG and visual effects as opposed to doing a fully animated production?
Um, I think going into this, we all kind of had an interest in like compositing. Me and Anthony, we both want to be compositors. But we also had people like Josh and Max who were interested in CG elements as well and animation of the sorts. And we thought, why not just try and combine them and see what we can do with that.
Great. So you were catering to your passions, your individual passions, and
Yeah, play
this
to
is
our
Yeah.
strengths.
Yeah.
all right. What was your inspiration behind this story? And did you have other stories that you were pitching? Did they all have the same general theme? Or so tell me about the story development process.
Yeah, so one of the general inspirations, it came from that one short, The Blue Umbrella. It's a little short story of like this blue umbrella who wants to, he sees this other umbrella and like they're inanimate objects, but they play to their strengths and like he tries to, get to her, but he's just an umbrella. And like it's a CG short, but it's like a hyper realistic type thing, but it's stylized as well. And another short that we liked was Knick Knack. It was a very, very old short, but it still tells the story of you know, gotta get from point A to point B to find love. But you find all these trials and tribulations along the way. So we like both of those story points, and we tried to you know incorporate that into our work.
All right. Thank you. Did you guys run into any unexpected situations during production?
Yeah, definitely. There was this one point where, because we were shooting live action footage, there were a lot of times where we actually had to go back and reshoot stuff. And as time went on, this was a project that was under development for like more than half a year, right? Almost a year. And so the weather changed, the seasons changed. So when we went back, we were shooting trees that were dead, and then a few months later, we were shooting trees that were, started getting greener and things like that. So that was definitely something that we struggled with doing, but we thought we chose the best footage that kind of flowed together well enough.
Thank you. So, Dave, do we have an audience question?
Yeah, Ross has a question. Wants to know what technique was used for the 2D animated parts. Is it actually 2D or stylized 3D?
Oh, I can answer that. It's the 3D characters. We animated it all like with the 3D models and then rendered them out like flat and used that as a texture on the signs. And all the 2D versions are like animated on twos and stuff to make them seem a little bit more sign-like and kind of blocky in the animation. So.
Thank you. So, this is for the entire team. Anyone, feel free to answer. What do you feel that you like? What kind of experience do you gain from this production that you think will help you grow as an artist, or has already helped you grow as an artist? And how will this help you in your career?
Um, well, a big challenge in the short was like getting these 3D elements and characters to look like they actually belonged there in the footage. So from a compositing standpoint, this definitely really helped me along with like my workflow and just a general sense of like, you know, just matching the blacks and the whites and just having overall confidence in my work.
think from like a production standpoint, like we're so used to working on like individual shots and that's all we have to worry about. But with such a larger production like this, we have to make sure everything's consistent, and communication is really key with working with our team to make sure everyone's on the same page. So overcoming that was definitely a good learning experience.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So was there anything that you were hoping to add to this short, but due to time constraints or anything else, you either had to cut it or you just didn't have the time to put it in there?
Yeah, there was actually like one shot. It didn't really contribute to the story at all, but like there's this Max had this idea of like because you know the whole short, it has to do with like crossing and like signs and stuff. So like we wanted to have like this one shot where like all of like our past projects, like our robots and stuff, are like crossing the street, and it would just be like a cute little, you know.
Yeah, that was actually an idea my dad came up with, and he told me, and we really want to do that, but we focused on the main stuff before anything else.
Dave, you got another audience question?
Whoops, you're muted there, Dave.
Yeah, we have a couple from Vince asking about what was your pipeline, and also about who served as your soup.
Yeah, so the pipeline was I guess I was the soup. The pipeline was mainly, you know, after we shot the footage, we would have to align all that footage and write down like the focal lengths, and we'd try and match the camera to a camera in Maya. That way we could actually begin animating in Maya. But once we do that, we render it out and bring it into Nuke and composite it and then edit it in Premiere.
Thank you. So what was the most difficult aspect of the entire production?
Probably shooting, I'd
yeah.
say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that also.
Yeah, because like you've got to do it the right time of day, the right weather. You have a limited time frame if you need people, and like a lot of our shots require on like random things happening, like the birds and the dog walking by. So like waiting for those kind of moments to happen was also hard.
Yeah,
And
a lot
he's
of
also,
patience
like-
and cold mornings.
He's not even in the scene, so like you can't really like, you kind of just have to assume and play it out in your head what's gonna happen when you're shooting it, and then just hope that it copies and follows through.
So how much footage did you guys have that you had to sort through and just think like, oh, did you see this animal moved and maybe he can interact with that animal? Or
We shot like 3 variances of like almost every shot, just to like make sure that like, you know, we wouldn't have to go back and reshoot, even though we did many times. It's almost, I think, like 2 terabytes worth of just footage that we had to like sort through and really just find the best out of those.
Mm-hmm. And you had additional help from another team member, right? With the cinematography?
Yeah, Derek Pinchot. He's a film major. He's with UCross a lot, and because of him, you know, he knew a lot more about cameras and shooting than we did. But we were really thankful and grateful for his help.
He was also able to get us equipment that we wouldn't have been able to have otherwise, like the
Yeah.
dolly that we used and stuff. So.
Cool. And did you have additional help from any other outside team members?
Yeah, we had help from a friend from mine from high school, Cooper Hyde, who went to the Berklee College of Music, just graduated like us. He was the music guy basically, and he came up with, I think, a score that really brought everything together. Without it, I think it would have felt really empty.
Great. All right. Looks like we have another question from the chat feed.
Yeah, we have a few questions. Vince, we'll start with Vince was asking about the equipment, the cameras, and if there's a lens kit used.
Yeah, I forget the lens exactly, but we did shoot with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K.
Fancy new cameras.
I'd like just a quick follow-up with that. Ross is asking about, did you have to get permissions for shooting on location? like did you intentionally avoid faces and so forth?
Yeah, we kind of tried to just stay out of people's way, and we just shot. We were honestly expecting to get like asked what we were doing, but we pretty much never did. So we just assumed that was fine, and we kept going.
I think inevitably, like every time we shot, there was at least like one homeless guy or somebody that walked up and was like, "What are you kids up to?" And like we had to explain ourselves every time. I think our usual excuse was we were shooting a mayonnaise commercial.
So just another question about the shoot. Asking about how did you shoot the parts in the middle of the street? Did you have to recruit car owning buddies for it?
We would kind of just wait until the light was red, and then I would just stand in the middle of the street and shoot anything that moved.
You have about 30 seconds to run out there, get what you need, and then go back.
Yeah, that took hours.
Another question from Alyssa asking what each of your personal favorite moment in the film was, or to follow up with that, what was you're particularly proud of?
I guess I can start. My favorite shot personally was when he jumps in and out of that bag. Just because from like a comp standpoint, I was like very nervous about a shot like that, but it ended up turning out to be something I was very proud of, and I was just happy with the workflow of that shot.
I think one of my favorite moments is when he falls off the garbage can. It's kind of just one of those moments throughout the whole thing that kind of just adds that little charm to the character, and it's like just something unexpected and like a little gag. And then also just the ending. I think the ending came out really sweet and is a nice heartwarming closure to the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite part would definitely be, it's one that we've been told is a lot of people's favorite part, is at the end with the little gag where she turns into the hand right before, he finally gets to greet her. But I also was really proud of it because I did a lot of the texturing on the project, and I was kind of afraid that the crosswalk lady sign's texture would not hold up that close, but it ended up being all right, I think.
I mean, my favorite part is when he like waves back to her on the sign. He like does this little wave, and I think it's like got a lot of character to it. I mean, it's my animation, but still, I think it's pretty great. But like the part I'm most proud of is when he breaks the chopstick, that shot, because like it was very difficult to like make it look like he had an idea and that he saw the shot, and we refined that shot a lot to make it look like it does now.
All right, Dave, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So are there more audience questions?
Yeah, 2. One was Ellie had a question about how did you coordinate the truck and the sign, and also Vince has another follow-up question about how you the pre-production of this. Did you have a script? How did you board it?
Okay. So yeah, with the truck, I'm assuming he's talking about that shot where like the truck rolls in with the PCMS sign. That shot was that truck was comped in. We shot that truck completely far off in
Different location.
in a parking lot actually.
Yeah.
And we just rotoed it out, comped it in, and the sign was 3D as well. We comped that behind the truck. So thankfully, we didn't really have to coordinate anything with timing. We kind of just slapped it on there and hoped for the best.
Yeah.
And as far as pre-production goes, we did, have a pretty extensive pre-production process. We had storyboards and many iterations from our advisors with animation, like Josh was saying, how it was difficult to get that moment to be clear because our characters don't have faces, so that makes it even more difficult for them to convey what they want. So it was a lot of iterations of storyboards and animations, and we did have a script that we based everything off of and had names for our characters and everything. So
Yeah, the only things we didn't plan were the things that we had to get lucky with, like the dogs and the birds, like we mentioned before, that we just had to be patient for.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. You guys did a great job. If we were all together, you'd be hearing a very loud round of applause right now. So cheers to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So up next, we have Marblehead Studios. Many of you may be familiar with the tale of Hades and Persephone's. Well, our next animated short is a modern retelling of this classic Greek myth. I present to you Lovebound.
Long ago, back in the days of gods and titans, the earth was always warm and bright. Until one day, everything changed. Young Persephone loved to watch the flowers bloom. Day after day, she dreamt of faraway places and romantic adventures. But her mother Demeter was always quick to remind her of her duties. Fields needed tilling, food needed to be picked. Persephone did as her mother wished, yet she yearned for something more. But fate had other plans. Out from the dark depths of the earth emerged Hades, god of the underworld. It seemed Persephone wasn't the only one who admired Earth's beautiful flowers. Soon, a young romance started to blossom. But it was only a matter of time before Demeter took notice. She couldn't have her daughter neglect her responsibilities once again. Persephone had to make a choice between her mother and herself. A world of love, wonder, and mystery stood before her. And for the first time in her life, she went against her mother's wishes. Unbeknownst to her, her disappearance took a toll on Demeter. For when Persephone left, Earth's greenery went with her. Zeus watched from on high as his cherished Earth was thrown into disarray. He knew he had to do something to restore balance to the world. He learned of Demeter's distress and knew there was only one way to bring Earth's greenery back. Persephone needed to return home. Little did he know, the young woman finally had everything she ever wanted. A beautiful home. Someone she loved to share it with. Her dream had come true, but it wouldn't last for long. Persephone felt it was her fate to be with Hades. She wished to be independent of her mother's controlling demands. With him, she could finally lead a life of love and luxury. But Demeter was lost without her daughter, and the flowers Persephone loved so much were dying. When Persephone heard how her mother's broken heart had affected all creation, she knew she had to make things right. Thus, Zeus declared a compromise. From that moment forward, Persephone would complete her chores on Earth with her mother, and when the season was right, Hades would return to her. Persephone knew what she had to do. For the two lovers, it wouldn't be easy. Demeter was overjoyed to have her daughter back. The earth flourished, flowers blossomed, but Persephone couldn't find joy in it anymore. She waited and waited, and after the end of a long harvest, the two lovers were reunited.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
We get wrapped up
Sorry for
watching
the
these
delay.
shows, and I was like, oh, yeah, by the way.
I'm like busy watching the short live on YouTube and forgetting that I'm actually hosting this. So hi, welcome everyone. We are back with Marblehead Studios. So how are you guys all feeling? You happy? Feeling
great?
good?
Yeah, we're glad that it came out how it did.
Yeah, you guys, the scope of this project is impressive. The amount of shots that you had, all of that animating, and then the tons of visual effects simulations. I mean, that is just an insane amount of work, and you guys did it. So that in itself is absolutely amazing. So you guys should be proud. All right, so audience, you know what to do. If you have a question, put it into the chat feed. My first question for you all is, can you tell us a bit about the story development? How you deviated from the original myth and why you made the changes that you did.
So our original myth is based on the original Hades and Persephone, which hopefully most people are familiar with. But in the original, Hades does kidnap Persephone and forces her to marry him. In her absence is what causes the start of the seasons. And we really wanted to change it and put more of a focus on like Persephone's choice in the matter and really show that she wants to follow her heart and be in love and not be tied to like marital duties like in the original.
Great. So what were some of the challenges that you guys faced during this production and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think our biggest was scope.
Yeah, we had a lot of material to work with, and initially we were told that we had a 3-minute limit, which was a bit rough because there's a lot of things that we had to get in so that the whole story was cohesive. So that was definitely one of the biggest challenges.
Just on that, like the amount of material that's in the original myth to begin with is like a lot more than even close to sort of what we included in like cutting it down and deciding actually which characters to keep in the first place, and having 4 like human characters was quite a bit of a challenge in and of itself too. So
all right, so it looks like we have an audience member question.
Yeah, question from Evan. What made you guys choose to use narration?
So it was another limit of the timeline. We felt like there was a lot of intricacies that we really needed a little bit of help explaining some of it, particularly with the negotiation where she spends half her time on Earth. We weren't really sure how we could portray that in our limited amount of time without a little bit of help.
and on top of that, well, first of all, like, yeah, describing the sort of deal without sort of being like cheesy or like overly like just like, I don't know, it was just not something that was too accomplishable. But on top of that, we just obviously wanted the whole like mythological or just like story feel, and so someone sort of like telling that along with it just sort of thought would sort of help with the vibe, I suppose.
All right, we have another question from the audience.
Yeah, we have a question about the faces of the characters. So and they're very rich and very, in the eyes especially, very expressive. So maybe you can talk a little bit about not just animating them, but also the creation of the characters.
So each character initially was very much much more stylized than they are now, but we did tie it back to be a bit more like accurately human proportionate. And from there, it was just a matter of like rigging the faces, giving them like bones and muscles that they can move on their face to make them expressive and allow us to give them these different expressions to show their emotion. Yeah, each eye has like 10 points on it that we can adjust and help express their feelings and thoughts a bit better.
But none of that.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say none of that would matter if we didn't have our reference footage of we actually videoed each other making silly faces just to sort of overemphasize, the emotions. I think Eli's my favorite with the little puppy dog shot of Demeter looking up at Zeus. So that was a good one.
All right, looks like we still have more audience questions.
Yeah, Alyssa was asking about the lighting in Hades, and what was your references for that?
So go ahead.
Yeah, our base was sort of like looking at a lot of just like hell imagery, as weird as that sounds. And well, I mean, obviously, because that's sort of what it is. But we decided pretty early on we didn't want the like classic like fire and brimstone, but we wanted a very like cool toned and like more blue like somberness to it, sort of reflect, I guess, like Hades' little bit of personality, and then just have like stark contrast to like the colors of the earth, I suppose. And then I guess Lindsay can go a little bit more on the actual.
So also just kind of hopping off what Dylan said for the underworld being like more cool, not really reflecting what we normally think of when we think of hell. And that kind of reflects Hades' character design, is we don't want to portray him as a bad guy. We want him to be like this kind, sophisticated man that kind of woos Persephone and invites her to live with him. So if we would have gone with more like menacing and death and fire everywhere, it would have gone against what we were attempting to portray with Hades.
Yeah, but I also really like at least the balcony shots. There's those like warm candles that sort of bring the warmth back into Hades when Persephone's there. You know, some classic color tone storytelling. But yeah, I like those shots especially.
Mm-hmm. All right, more questions?
Yeah, Ross was curious about if there's any notable inspirations for the character designs, and did you have any design rules for the characters?
So for Zeus, obviously we want him to be big and powerful and show that through like his body design. But we also didn't want him to be like overbearing, which is why he's still like the same size as everyone else. Because he is just a mediator. He's not like controlling. Persephone, we wanted to be like younger, youthful, and like softer almost. Same with Demeter, because she is reflective of the earth. We want her to be like bountiful and round and like earthy tones and colors. And then Hades, we, again, like I mentioned, didn't want him to be portrayed as the bad guy. So we went with more of like an attractive look for him and didn't make him like overbearingly large so that he wouldn't be intimidating, if that hopefully answers your question.
Yeah. So can you guys talk a little bit about some of the visual effects that you did in the short? You know, everyone's wearing these billowing robes and you have leaves flying everywhere. So how did you use different software for that? How did you approach all the different simulations?
Yeah, for the clothes, we ended up using a program called Glow 3D. And that was a bit of a learning curve because we only started playing around with it at the beginning of this term, or no, the beginning of last term. We didn't have a lot of time to work with it, but we initially modeled the clothes in Maya, brought it over to Glow, and got it to sim so that it was basically just draping on everyone. Luckily, nothing was skin tight, so we had a bit of a leeway, but that was how we tackled clothes.
Yeah, and then I guess the leaves are the other end of that, and that was all pretty much done in Maya. Lindsay provided some great leaf references and models and textures for those, and I just threw them in a mesh network, made it spin a little bit, and put a bunch of them in there, and then just like tried to time it when they like kind of fly in from that one shot when she's sitting down, and then just have the little spirals as she's we're looking at her from above. So
great. Another audience question?
Yeah, let's see if I can tie together two questions here. One was asking about what was some of the challenging parts of retelling this story, and also specifically about Persephone. What other possibilities or what things were you thinking about for her and making her choices?
So some of the challenges in storytelling and just getting our story across was just having to crunch it into the 3 to 4 minute time frame and then not having them physically speak, just like relying on visuals, on their facial expressions, on their body motions. but then also having the narrator to back up and maybe emphasize a bit more what's going on in their head in case it's just not entirely clear. As for conveying Persephone's motives, we wanted to like show how frustrated she was with her mom at the beginning, not wanting to do her chores anymore and not wanting to do her work, and then seeing this opportunity to a new life just walk up to her, which is of course Hades coming out of the crack. So she just decides that she's going to run with it and follow her heart and go with Hades. But she does learn like her choices have consequences, and in her absence, the earth is just falling apart. And she knows that she has to go back to make things right, whether or not she wants to, it's the right thing to do. But that's kind of how the deal is struck, her staying in the underworld for 6 months and going on Earth for 6 months.
Yeah, and I actually just want to jump off there. Also, I guess if we didn't already, give thanks to our screenwriter student who helped us write the script, because there was kind of like a point, I want to say maybe like a third or halfway into just doing this, that we, our screenwriter who wrote the script for the narration came to us and was like, okay, well, like who is the main character here? And we kind of like, I guess all of us sort of had like a little bit of different ideas until it was actually just like finally bouncing it off of her when we were like, okay, we're like, oh, should it be Demeter because she's the one changing the world? Should it be Hades because he's approaching? But we decided to go with Persephone there because it's sort of her action that sort of spurs everything off. And so it was that decision. Alyssa Harden, by the way, if I didn't say her name, sorry about that. Yeah, so she was that was, I just think that was a key point in my mind for some of the stuff. Yeah.
All right. We have another question from the audience.
Yeah, Ellie was, acknowledges how much work was involved there with the characters, and had some questions about like what processes you came up with to streamline that. And now that it's done, is there anything that like you'd do differently?
So I did all of the character modeling and highly regret not starting with the base model. I built them all from scratch, except for Hades. When I finally accepted, I need to just start with the base model and sculpt to what I want. So in terms of streamlining, I would definitely have started with the base and just transform that into what we're looking for rather than starting from scratch over and over and over again. And same with the rigging, like having a base rig to work off of instead of rebuilding the legs and the arms and the spines from scratch. But luckily, Casey and Dylan, you both helped with rigging, and it was a huge help, and you guys did amazing.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question. So the question I present to you all is, if you had a time machine and can go back to fall of 2019, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't keep telling ourselves we have time.
Yeah, I would say narrow down the scope. 4 characters was not necessary. We could have done it in 3, maybe even 2. So,
all right.
I'll be the black sheep here. I'll go back to the concrete wall idea. That's what I would tell everyone. But
so what was the concrete wall idea?
Nick, you actually suggested it to us after we turned it down, like 2 terms in, and we were like, "Oh my gosh!" But it was the idea of telling it as like those like Greek sculptures that are sort of inlaid as like comic strips. I don't know the actual word.
Reliefs.
Reliefs, yes, reliefs. Thank you. So I thought that's just something silly I would do.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Again, a big round of applause to you all. So we are all very proud of you. Okay, so up next, we have an exciting action-packed short for you. This animated short tells the story of a rogue scientist and her android who are discovered by a ruthless mercenary who happens to look a lot like Nick Justishin while they're hiding out in an abandoned factory. The scientist has one final upgrade to make to her creation, but can she get to our hero in time who is struggling to fight off their enemy? I present to you Project Android. Hey everyone, welcome back. We are here with Team Android. Excuse me. So that was awesome, guys. It's always so exciting to watch that short. The choreography is fantastic. The work you did was fantastic. So you should really be happy with it. Are you guys happy?
Yeah.
Great. So my first question for you is, what was your inspiration?
Well, I think we started kind of brainstorming for this project. Anthony and I were really brainstorming a ton over the summer, and we got a lot of inspiration, particularly from just like sci-fi stuff. There was a video game trailer for Anthem that we were like, wow, that's so cool. So there were a lot of sci-fi things that caught our attention, and we also took a lot of inspiration from Mega Man. So that's kind of where like an Android idea came from. So we kind of built from there. And then, let's see. So that's inspiration, I guess, style-wise. Then we also got a lot of, we just knew like from the trailer that we watched, that Anthem trailer, that there were a lot of fight scenes and everything. So we also wanted to do a lot of fighting, especially because we're all, a lot of us do motion capture, and that would be a really interesting thing for us to do. I don't know if anyone wants to add on to that because there's a lot, there's a lot to talk about with that question.
Yeah, there's always a ton of inspiration to draw from. I think that, you know, once we knew a fight scene was going to happen, things like The Matrix or Marvel fight scenes, goofy things like Kung Fury or Tron or Blade Runner, like all those things played a role in us doing research to figure out what we wanted it to look like, as well as integrating tricking and martial arts into the concept or ideas of an android and a fight.
All right. So your team took advantage of several different technologies during the creation of this short. Can you talk a bit about the character creation and the character animation?
Yeah. So we knew that our scope was big, and we knew that it was going to take a lot to get it done from beginning to end. So we wanted to try to incorporate everything we could to make that process as streamlined as possible. And that's where we drew from a lot of our interests that we were already studying kind of independently for motion capture or photogrammetry or retopoing, things like that. So, yeah.
Can you explain a little bit for anyone who doesn't know what you mean by photogrammetry or retopoing?
Yeah, photogrammetry is awesome. I think that we were really lucky to get some people that would allow us to take so many pictures of their face. In one case, it was our program director, Nick. We had our friend Julie and a master's student, Ileana, who we didn't even know. We just saw her and looked like she matched our concepts and reached out to Master like, hey, would you mind sitting for a photogrammetry session? So you take tons of pictures around someone 360 degrees with a lot of trackers and controlled lighting, and then you translate that into software that will create a 3D mesh for you. And retopoing is making sure that mesh, a shorthand is just making all the polygons very pretty so that they work with the rigs and will work for animation.
Thank you. So you did mention before motion capture and that a lot of you are interested in motion capture. Now, motion capture requires a good deal of people. I mean, you have the people who have to run the system. You need to have the actors. Someone's got to sort through all that data. You have to clean the animation, apply it to the characters, and it just keeps going. So all of that in addition to all of the rest of the work you needed to complete in order to finish this short. I mean, how did a team of 4 get this done?
We had a lot of help.
Yeah. I wouldn't call the motion capture part of this project a team of 4 for sure. We had a ton of people help us out. We knew before we even really started the production on this project that motion capture was going to be a huge part, and we knew a lot of people through the Drexel MoCap Club who were already super excited to help out. We capture all of our motion capture with, we had 4 actors. 2 of them were Drexel students, Matt and Jeff. and then 2 of them were actually people we knew outside of Drexel, Alex and Joe, who Joe is actually Anthony's brother. So we had a lot of good connections to get actors. And then after we capture all that data, like you don't just capture it and then it can go on your character and you're good and everything's great. There's a lot of cleanup involved and retargeting it the right way onto the characters. So we had a lot of help from juniors, Deirdre Liu, Shannon Boyle, and Alex Talatskaya. They were a huge help. And also, like for the shoots themselves, we had a lot of students come and help, like take pictures and just kind of see what was going on. So motion capture was a huge team effort. And we are really happy that so many people helped out.
All right, so it looks like we have a question from the audience.
Yeah, well, you've answered part of Ross's question about how did you find mocap actors for this, but the follow up on that, can you talk a little bit about like the process of directing them, the choreography, and how that went? How much of it was you telling them? How much of it was them kind of improvising, so forth?
Oh my gosh, all of the above. So, like, our process to get to like a previs was difficult. Like, we were poaching like movie scenes and not knowing if someone can do that or if that's going to work. And basically reaching out through, so Mara and I co-founded the Drexel Motion Capture Club at Drexel. So just going to those bi-weekly meetings, we meet a lot of people. And you meet a lot of people that are interested in the exact same thing you're doing. So that was helpful to get a lot of hands and people that were interested quickly. Getting actors that are willing, yeah. I mean, I distinctly remember a moment where I was, they were doing a fight interchange and it looked good. It like popped off screen and they'd been rehearsing it for 20 minutes, our actors, and we just all perked up and we're like, yeah, just do that, just keep doing more fighting and like actually make contact and they just kind of stood up and looked at me like, well, yeah, but that's also how we get hurt, so we can't just go do that. We have to kind of plan some of it. So I think a large portion of it was giving them great reference that we had worked out over months and then letting them do whatever they do best. And that's the shots that we kept.
Great. So was there stuff that you had to cut due to time constraints or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always things that are cut. We're super ambitious and wanted to do a whole lot. But it didn't really stop us from learning, which was, I think, the silver lining, because, just in fall we got facial motion capture and we immediately were just like, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but let's shoot the reference anyway. And we did. We found people. We markered up their face. We had lots of help from people already teasing that technology out. So yeah, there's shots that are dropped and there's a whole opening intro sequence, but all in all, it turned out great.
Question from the audience.
Yeah, Julia was curious about your thought process in lighting and your color scheme.
Listening to a lot of people, we knew we wanted stark lighting. We knew we wanted red and purple and figuring out what color we'll highlight in there. But we, again, had some help. Our friend Kate Uding helped with previs lighting a lot of that. And she kind of set the stage for like, okay, this is what it should look like. And then we kind of took that from there as the characters and motion capture came together. We were just like, take it around to advisors, see what they think, take it around to students, like what could be darker? Should we paint over some things? And more ideas, more stark lighting, and it hides some stuff and it reveals some other things. So
I think Claire spent a lot of time on those environments and trying to set them up in advance to match up the colors.
All right, do we have another question from the audience, Dave?
Yeah, kind of following up what Nick was saying. Mackenzie was asking about the sets. What were the struggles in creating those?
The biggest struggle we had with the sets, we had 2 biggest struggles with the sets. The biggest one was accounting for the fact that the data for all the animation would be mocap. So we wanted a lot of space so that we wouldn't have clipping issues or characters running into things, which we still ended up encountering anyway. But we had to come up with all these workarounds of, okay, well, if her desk is over here, where is this? And with the factory, have just a big open space just so that they have the room to fight. It was less of a concern of what were they going to run into as they were fighting, less to worry about, and giving directions on the mocap set.
All right, thank you. Do we have another question from the audience?
Yeah, sort of tying together a few questions here, mostly about the collaborations and the outsourcing, and just curious about how that went, the difficulties that were involved in that. Maybe kind of speak to that.
I guess for outsourcing, particularly, I'm particularly thinking of outsourcing to underclassmen. That was a huge part. We had a lot of helpers, not just in mocap. We had a lot of sophomore students who were just like, hey, I want to help model and, you know, contribute something to the show. So we had a lot of help there, which was challenging because there was actually so many people that wanted to help that it was like we had to make sure that we could actually get all of the information to everybody, and also not like have to force them to be in like long meetings and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like we had to make sure it was efficient and easy for people to join in. We got a lot of help there. We actually had a few students who we had kind of as like managers. So they also helped communicate to those groups of like helpers to work with us. So there was a lot. And of course, we got assistance with lighting from Kate Uding, as Anthony mentioned, all of our mocap help. We had music help, a music industry major, Amy. Oh my gosh, I forgot what her last name was.
Amy Carson.
Amy
Carson.
Carson.
And John Salmon for the score.
Yeah, so there's so much, awesome people helping us out on this.
We can't forget our concept artists as well. Like we had Alex and Note both helping us out with our character concepts, which with a lot of collaboration between all of us, I think we really helped shine through their designs and like everybody else's individual ideas as well into their final model.
All right, another question?
Yeah, Jeff has a question, and you might, each of you might have a different answer to this question, but what was your favorite scene to work on?
I mean, fight scenes. Fight scenes are fun. They're hard. They're very hard. Like watching a lot of movies, you can blink and 7 shots will go by. And if you try to write it down, because that's what we have to do, we have to board it. And you start counting. You're like, there was 13 shots in like 2.5 seconds. What just happened? When you break it down. So that was my favorite part.
Kind of silly. My favorite shot was actually the one with the eyes just darting around with the camera following that. Looking at that shot, a lot of my reference for making that camera move was actually like The Office and Parks and Rec, just with that like free movement type stuff. So that was just like my little bit of fun work. Even though you couldn't see the fight like super well during the shot, it was a lot of fun to like work on.
I liked a lot of the shots. I can't pick one. I feel like I jumped in and animated like all throughout. And I think they all turned out great. I think as a whole, we have a lot of good shots.
My favorite shot would probably be the one where we're up high looking at the crane and we can see the scientists at the control panel, because I like being able to see the textures, because I did a lot on texturing and just seeing the environment as a whole just in a different kind of way than I was used to seeing from that angle and seeing all the hard work that went into it.
Great. All right, so we have time for one last question. And my question to you all is, do you have any advice that you would give to our upcoming senior class who's already started the process of working on senior project?
Yeah, I mean, for some of them, it's hopefully going to be a little bit telling of the trials we went through as they worked on our project. But overall, I would personally just say reach out to your colleagues, whether that's underclassmen or other majors. You of course have your core advising and your senior year classmates to support you. But don't underestimate adjuncts, faculty, and friends and family. Just reach out to as many people because they all have really awesome ideas that you wouldn't otherwise think of.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback off Anthony, make sure you're always heard in the project. Even if it's like you have one little idea, that one little idea could change a shot or a scene completely for the better. So make sure if you have something, say it, even if it's something stupid.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. A big round of applause to you all. Well done. All right, so our final production comes from Garden Club Studios. Prepare to have your heartstrings tugged as you watch this touching tale about the relationship between a child, a tiger, and an abusive caretaker. I present to you Caged. Welcome back. We are here with Garden Club Studios. So truly beautiful animated short, everyone. You guys should all be proud. How are you feeling right now?
Good. Very good.
Good, great. All right, so I've got some questions for you. The first question is, can you tell us a bit about the story and how you came up with this? Because it seems like a very important issue. So, what inspired you? What's the story behind the story?
Yeah, so we had a lot of ideas going around. We started brainstorming at the beginning of junior year, and we always kind of knew we want to do something sweet, like something a bit touching. But I feel like none of the ideas really stood out to us as like being like the one. And then like one night we kind of like took a step back and we thought to ourselves like, what kind of like message do we want to put out there? So that was how we landed on anti-animal abuse. We were really inspired by the Pixar short Kipple. We really love that short because it's like a similar theme of like friendship and anti-animal abuse. And so that's how we came up with the idea. We were like, oh, what if we had a really cute baby tiger? And then it kind of just went from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we even we had so many other stories that we scrapped. Like for a while we were like totally set on this idea where it was going to be about like a kid going into a barber shop and a coming of age story, and then we took a step back and we were like, wait, literally none of us want to do anything with hair. So it's probably, so we like the story, but we were like, this is probably a bad idea. So that was one of the many stories that we pushed aside.
All right. So your short has a very distinct style. You're using 3D animation to create this 2D cartoon-like aesthetic. Why this design choice, and what were some of the inspirations behind the 2D style?
Yeah, so there's a lot of shorts I feel that we were inspired by, like Feast and One Small Step, and I mentioned Kidpool. And I think that originally also Into the Spider-Verse had come out recently, and we're really inspired by that. So we wanted to try out that 2D, 3D style. And I think also, like Sarah just said, we didn't want to do hair. And I think actually, looking back on it, not having to do fur, real fur on the tiger, and doing poly hair on the child instead of real hair, made things a bit smoother for us.
And on top of it being an appealing kind of aesthetic, it also provided a unique opportunity to, it was a challenge, how would we even achieve this? So that was, one of the biggest things in our production that we tackled that we were able to succeed with.
That was actually my next question, is what were some of the challenges you faced creating this 2D style using a 3D environment and 3D characters?
So one of the biggest issues that we ran into was getting those bright highlights on the edges of the characters, and coming up with different ways. I think we had 5 different ways that we tried to do it before we settled on our final method of getting that light. So just figuring out how to do that, figuring out how to light without actually lighting the character and making them look 3D. It was a lot of research and a lot of long attempts.
Could you go into what the final method ended up being to get that nice rim light?
Yeah, so we had a chalk render, which is basically a render of our characters without any of their textures on, so no color, just flat. And then we added a ramp that would specify the edges of the characters where those were. And then by using lights in the 3D package, we were able to select specific parts of the character to have that rim light in the compositing software.
Great. Thank you. Dave, we have a question from the audience.
Yeah, we have a number of questions actually. I guess we'll start with questions about the soundtrack and the Foley work. Who handled that and what your input into that was?
So we had our amazing professor, John Averies, did all of our soundtrack and all of the sound effects as well. We kind of just showed him some shorts that we liked, and he just ran with it. We did go through a few iterations of critique and some notes on the sound effects, but for the most part, he's really capable and he did an awesome job, and we're so grateful to him for helping us out with that. Yeah.
All right. Another question?
Yeah, a few questions asking about sort of the thought process for the lighting and how it ties into the story, and a little bit about the sort of the workflow for that.
Yeah, the lighting was a whole process. We had like a lighting theory where just with the color scheme, we wanted the color scheme and the lights to reflect what was going on in the story. So in the beginning sequence, everything's a lot more neutral. And then as you get into like the training sequence, when they're in the 10, it starts to get bluer. So everything is like a blue color grade. And then in the point where the kid is in their bedroom, that's like the absolute bluest, because that's like our turning point. And then as soon as they get out of the train car, it starts to get brighter and brighter until the end, when we had like the god rays coming from behind the fence and everything starts to get all golden and it fades to white.
Yeah, we have Mara has a question about how you animated Olive's hair at the end.
That was animated with expressions. There's a lot of playing around with sine waves. I did all the rigging for the characters, and Olive's hair was a big struggle the kid's hair is a big struggle because there were a lot of strands of hair. I think there were Julia modeled all the hair. I'm pretty sure we had 50 to 60 individual strands of hair. Not all of them are completely rigged, but most of them are. And that was just going in and adding in like a lot of math expressions to them, and with a lot of trial and error until it looked right.
And just to add how Sarah was saying how there were like 60 something hair strands. There were a lot of things that Sarah and Mackenzie both wrote some scripts to help with our pipeline. For example, we had to render out specific passes for each character, and that involved in Maya applying like an ID number to each individual piece of their model in the software. So you would have to go in on each strand of hair. So a script was able to do that all automatically.
So what were some of your favorite moments from the entire production?
I think that my favorite moments in general were like whenever we would be working on a specific part for a while, and then like once we finished it, like for example, I modeled the tiger and then also textured them. Like I kind of did like the whole design process on the tiger, and that was like such a like long process to come up with how we wanted to stylize the tiger. And like that moment when we finally like applied the textures on the model with this like showing this orange and the black stripes, like it was just such a good moment to be like, oh, it actually looks like a tiger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite moment was we had a lot of like back and forth about the ending. Like the ending, I feel like for a while we were like, it's missing something. And then of all people, like we were just talking, and like Anthony's dad like came up with for actually breaking the prod, because that wasn't something that like we had come up with initially. And we were like, oh my God, like that's perfect, like breaking the cycle of abuse, like breaking a physical object. And it seemed like so obvious. But we had to have like an outside person like actually come in and say that to us for us to realize that like that was like the obvious way it should end.
All right. Anyone else have a favorite moment they want to share?
I would agree with, kind of along the lines of Julia. Just we worked with just the gray models for so long, and once we actually had, and I for one was doing a lot of lighting development early on without the textures. So as you can imagine, it was nice to visualize at first, but it was still completely different from how it ended up looking. And once we actually got all the textures in and layers all together and finally saw the final look, that was pretty satisfying.
Yeah, definitely like figuring out our comp method and getting that first shot completed and saying, this is how we're doing it. This is what it's going to look like. Because up until that point, there were a lot of things that we were trying to make happen, but that hadn't happened yet. And then once it all just kind of fell into place, it just was amazing.
All right. So knowing what you do now, if you had to do it all again, is there anything you would do differently?
Similar to the Persephone group, I would say reel in our scope a little bit. Like, I know one of the other questions you asked to the other team was like, would you cut, or was there anything that got cut? And like, our answer to that is like no, because we did too much. Yeah, like I would probably try to only do a short with 2 characters. It was a struggle to, model and rig and animate 3 characters a lot of the time. But I'm happy with how it turned out.
So now you said you didn't really cut anything and that your scope was so big. Was there something that you wanted to add to the short, but you just didn't have the time to do it?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I meant, that I feel like we have a hard time answering that question because, well, for example, the hair being animated, I felt like we had like a list that was like dream goals of things that, if we have the time, we want to incorporate them, and that was on there. And I felt like for a while it was kind of like a pipe dream, like I wasn't really sure it was going to happen, but then Sarah's like really awesome and rigged the hair for us. So, and then I started animating it individually in some of the shots, and I feel like that added a lot. I guess the only thing I can think of is that at one point we were talking about maybe having some little like particle effects in the light or something like that. I guess that didn't happen, but mostly everything we wanted to happen is in there in some form.
That's great. So what were some of the unexpected scenarios that popped up that kind of pushed back your timeline or set you back a little bit? Things that, I mean, minus the whole world in the middle of a pandemic, minus that unexpected situation, was there something else that happened that you were like,
Ironically, more sickness. Throughout the year, like, there would be like a term where like one of us would be sick for like a couple weeks, and I feel like we get so much done in like a week. Like, we're just like constantly pumping out stuff that like to have even one of us gone for a week was like big. And I feel like I was sick for a couple weeks in the fall term. Julia was sick for a couple weeks in the winter term. And just trying to catch back up from that was definitely a big obstacle. That was a setback.
all right, looks like we have a question from the audience.
Yeah, Dino is curious about the design choice for the ringmaster. How it's very rigid and linear compared to the other characters.
Yes, so that was in the concept that Sarah made. He was very sharp and angular, whereas like Olive and the tiger are both very round and soft. And originally, that was almost lost in the clothing. The clothing bulked him out a bit too much, but through a lot of like finessing the shapes of his clothes and through some like blend shape cleanup and tightening up of those shapes, we were able to get him to be really sharp and rigid.
All right. Do we have another question from the audience?
Yeah, just a technical question on how you handled the sunrise at the end.
That was a trial and error process. That kind of like I kind of threw that together at the end. Because we had this whole process, we've just been like, we want the God rays at the end. Like, it was in our storyboards. We'd had it all like in mind all along, and then what we actually ended up doing was it was completely in post. Like, none of that was rendered out from Maya or anything. It was literally like me hand drawing these God rays coming out from behind Olive or from behind the kid, and like using all the different objects in the scene as masks, and then adding a bunch of glow nodes. I don't know. My node network in Nuke was very large and extensive, but yeah, that was completely done in post.
All right. So I think we have time for one more question. So Dave, if we have another one from the audience.
Yeah, a question about the sort of your process for developing the characters' motivations, and developing them as individuals. You can speak to that.
That's a great question because that kind of goes really heavily into our story. Like when we were coming up with the story, sometimes we would be wondering what should happen next in the story. Like, oh, the tiger refuses to do something, and then what happens after that? Or like when the tiger falls off the balancing, like what should happen next? And we kind of had to like put ourselves in the mindset of the ringmaster, which is like hard to do, obviously, because he's very evil. So we just kind of had to think of like how this abusive character would like react in the certain situations. It was definitely a lot of like thinking like what would these specific characters do. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention was we consciously decided not to show the ringmaster's face with that character because we wanted him to be like representative of like anyone can be abusive, like that kind of idea. Oh, and we also always wanted the child and the tiger to not react violently. When we were developing our characters, we really wanted the ringmaster to be the evil one, and the child was unfortunately in that circumstance where they were being asked to abuse the tiger, but in the end they, you know, defy the ringmaster and they don't react with violence.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm sure everyone is super happy to have all of their questions answered. We love your short. I want to give a big thanks to everyone once again for joining us and celebrating our seniors. There is one last thing I do want to say to all the seniors, and we are missing some of our animation seniors because they were involved in other projects. This applies to you all also if you're with us right now. So I started teaching here at Drexel in January 2018, and you were all sophomores then. I had experience training and teaching other CG artists, but I had never formally taught at a school before. So in a way, you guys were all kind of my guinea pigs when it came to teaching classes. I was transitioning from about a decade of professional work in this industry to training the next generation of CG artists, which is all of you guys. My first class with you all was Compositing 1. I'm pretty sure I had all of you in Comp 2. And then for the next 2 years, I would see you guys again and again in a lot of different classes. It was absolutely my pleasure to have been able to teach you. You know, I saw all of you progress. I saw your skills get better. I saw your work gradually become better and better. But now it's time for you all to leave and to put those skills to good use. And, you know, you're my first graduating class that I've actually built relationships with because I've been with you guys for 2 years, and I'm really going to miss you. I know some of you heard me say this earlier in the week, but you guys are like my little baby birdies that I'm kicking out of the nest and I'm cheering you to fly on. But at the same time, I'm in the nest, like bawling my eyes out because I'm really going to miss you guys. So I'm incredibly proud of you all. And I'm proud of the work that you've done. Everyone's proud of you. You guys should be proud also. And I want to wish you the best of luck in all of your future endeavors. And should you ever have any questions or need advice, you know where to find all of us. We will be here at Drexel. So thank you all. It's truly been my pleasure. So. All right, Nick, do you have any parting words? I know everyone's back up on the screen.
Yeah, actually, I am just going to, I want to make sure I can get everybody on screen at once. So I need to push a couple more buttons here. It didn't quite set up the way I wanted. So here we go. There. And I don't have much else to add. I think you guys are all amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the world now as alumni. I usually talk a lot. I'm a professor. I'm supposed to talk a lot. But I'm not your professor anymore. Now I'm just a fellow dragon, someone else who happened to graduate from Drexel University. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with the world. Looking forward to you doing a lot of amazing, amazing things. Thank you so much. Hopefully, I think at this point, everybody is back as back in the grid. So we have everybody on screen. So I'm going to clap and, I don't know if everyone on stage can see all the claps going on YouTube, but I think that's it. This concludes everything. Thank you for everyone for joining us on YouTube. Thank you, all of you alumni here that presented your work. And, we're looking forward to seeing not only what these students or these alumni are going to be doing in the future, but of course, what you'll be doing as you teach future generations yourselves. All right, I think that's it for our show. Everybody, thank you again for joining us. Until next time, have fun.